On you, Jared, and tonight the Magpies are under the microscope and they could do with Peter Dacos, and we'll chat to the latest Hawk legend. Hello and welcome again to On the Couch following round 17, and it was very much moving round. We'll look at the AFL ladder very shortly, but plenty to discuss with the boys, and let's welcome them. Mike Sheehan.
Hi, Jared.
And the latest Hawk legend in Jason Dunstall. Congratulations on behalf of everybody associated with our show and here at Fox Footy, Jason.
Thank you very much, Jared.
I was a player that played in your era, and it was a privilege to watch you play, but unfortunately I would have preferred watching you from the same side.
We are an exalted company, aren't we?
Yeah.
But we aren't going to spare you when we grill you later in the show.
Understand that.
You're moving from that chair to that chair in the second segment.
A little bit nervous about that.
Well, Mike's been doing a lot of research.
I know, and he won't tell me what he's going to give to me.
Who was the big loser out of the weekend? Because there were a few to pick from.
For me, it was Collingwood. I mean, this is off the back of a fourth quarter last week when the Suns were out on their feet, had no interchange, they couldn't get over the top of them, and then they butter up and they get smashed by 11 goals by Essendon and find themselves teetering on the edge of the eight.
It's deeper than that, Jason. Since the bye, they are 4-5, and the wins have been against West Coast, St Kilda, Melbourne and Carlton.
It's not going well.
We've been deceived by Collingwood. They're not much good.
Well, I think they're not much good if they've got some holes in their list, and at the present time they've got too many injuries, and it just goes to show that if you're going to go to the very top of the ladder, you've got to have half a dozen really good players in the reserves.
They're worrying out you as staying in the eight.
Absolutely, Michael, I agree with you.
Top.
Who are your losers? Because the Gold Coast went out of the eight.
The Gold Coast went, and they are my loser. I mean, all week the speculation was how they would go without the best player in the competition. And he is, look, he is clearly the best player in the comp, and he's going to leave a massive hole. They didn't rise to the challenge, the Gold Coast.
But it's funny because they did in the last quarter last week, and then they were
playing
nowhere to be seen.
They were playing Collingwood last week, remember?
Oh, who you see the...
Well, Collingwood's form line's terrible. We should have had a closer look at them. I think the Gold Coast were really disappointing. 7 points up at half-time, playing in Queensland, admittedly not in Brisbane or on the Gold Coast, playing in Queensland and being beaten by 28.
Yeah, I didn't agree with Robbo either on 360. I think using last week as an excuse doesn't wash for me, because they fought back brilliantly in the second quarter. They came out after half-time and the Bulldogs just steamrolled them early. There was plenty of juice left in the tank as the half-time siren went.
Jared, the Gold Coast had an extra day. It wasn't the Bulldogs. The Bulldogs have gone from Melbourne on a 6-day turnaround. Gold Coast had 7.
Who do you see as the big loser?
I think it's got to be Port Adelaide at this stage, Jason. The Portress has got cracks in it everywhere. Some of their very good players are not finding the footy as they were, and this is a very exciting team that's playing almost second-guess football at the present time. They're not playing with the same carefree attitude. A few people have worked them out, and I think if they can emerge from this, they will be far stronger. The big winner for me, though, was Bomber Thompson. Bomber Thompson, I think, is entitled to look down the barrel and address everybody in the media and all the doubters that were keen to get Jake Carlisle back to the back line and say, it took a while, but you were wrong. And I think he was right.
To be fair, Carlisle has gone back.
He had to send him back. He then got his confidence up, and now he's come forward and showed us what he's capable of doing.
There's a bigger question out of this, though. The bigger question now, and I think by the day, as I said, it's becoming less likely that Hurdy will coach Essendon next year and more likely that Bomber will stay there.
That's a pretty reactionary
No, it's not based on this. It's not based in...
No, I know what it's based on. It's based on the fact that you think he's got a better pedigree as a coach,
It's based on the entire set of circumstances.
This time last year, Michael, James Hird had them 13-3. He's got a 2-year contract for plenty of cash. He's coming back to the country in the next couple of weeks.
You're not comparing apples and apples here. I mean, Hurdy's situation it's not just the bloke who had him 13-3 last year. Lots of things have happened in the interim. Bomber's starting to like this job, and Essendon are starting to play well. I don't think that the coaching situation is cut and dried at Essendon.
It's particularly difficult, and I think it's fair to say the muddies are perhaps the water's a little muddied. But as they continue to improve and surge into the 8, you build momentum. You're loath to change that, aren't you?
So let me interpret that. You're saying, too, that you think there's a chance that Bomber will coach them next year.
I think if
they stay on the same...
I think there's a chance, yes. But we're all looking from the outside, aren't we?
We speak to Bomber a lot.
Yep.
Don't you think Bomber has got that freedom, that relaxation, knowing that this is a one-year deal?
He likes it, Jared. He's enjoying it.
He might like it under the current circumstances.
He is enjoying
knowing
the
that
job.
there is an end point.
If you were to ask Bomber, I'm sure he would say to you, I'm liking it better than I thought I would.
Well, I reckon he'd be liking it a lot more as we take a look at the AFL ladder. And for the first time in many weeks, the Bombers find themselves inside the 8 and they've got a growing percentage. And I'll tell you what, Jason, if they do stay there, and that's what would seem likely, they are going to be a very difficult side to combat, even if they finish outside the top 4.
Well, they've beaten, let's face it, a couple of teams above them the last fortnight. Port Adelaide, then Collingwood. I mean, they absolutely decimated the Pies, but they're one of the teams with momentum building.
And the other thing they do have in their favour, they've got 2 blokes coming back in the next 3 weeks. Goddard next week, Joe Watson 2 weeks later, that get 60 quality possessions a week.
Yeah, they go okay, don't they?
Let's take a look at the Pies because they are just hanging on in 8th position. It was the lowest score since 1927 against the Bombers. It was probably the lowest score.
They won the flag in 1927.
Did they?
Yeah.
Well, they had a bad game that particular game. Here's the lowest score under Bucks, 5 goals. It wasn't brilliant footy, but it was the lack of energy. It was the lack of intensity that they showed across the board. The turnovers, it was horrible footy.
It was all round, and that was exemplified to me by Dane Swan. I mean, I can't understand what's happened to Swanee. Swanee is either no longer an elite player or he's carrying an injury.
I know earlier in the year he played the forward role and he kicked a few goals, but he doesn't look like he overly enjoys it. And some players need the freedom, I think, of playing on ball. Some players don't make great role players, Mike, and I'm wondering if Dane Swan's one of them.
Well, he's lost his ping. There's no, in my view, he's played forward for the first half.
Yep.
He just doesn't have, that gut running that Swanee used to have. It's not there. There are his numbers. I mean, they tell the tale, don't they?
Well,
the 30-plus disposals in the previous 5 years.
And I think sometimes that plays with your head when you feel like you're not getting the ball the way you normally do. You don't feel like you're playing well either, and sometimes psychologically that can have a negative impact.
They also tell that he's playing a different role. The question is, why is he playing that role? Is he playing it because he's got a crook heel, as has been speculated upon, or is he playing it because Bucks doesn't want a run-forward player through the midfield that has dominated the last decade?
It's got to be the former. And he looks like he's running with a stone in his boot.
He does.
Doesn't he?
But then would you not then try to get him right so he can be at his best come September?
What confused the issue was Bucks put him into the middle when the game was lost. He had plenty to say after the game. Nathan Buckley, let's hear from him.
Our effort was really poor. Our execution was poor. Our want and endeavour to stay on task was non-existent. So we've made a massive withdrawal from what we've been trying to build.
And I think that's the key point. They were building until about 4 or 5 weeks ago when all of a sudden...
No, 9 weeks ago. I told you their record. It's a poor record in 9 weeks. They've only beaten bottom 4 teams.
What I saw on the weekend was an issue between the ears. Their intensity, Michael, is to me the reflection of what's going on between the ears at Collingwood. Call it confidence, call it whatever you like, but they need to address this because some of their turnovers reminded me of a bottom 4 side, not a side that's in the 8 currently.
It's interesting, just throwing it on the boot a number of times. When your confidence is up, you'll hang on to it and you'll find an option and you'll actually use the footy because possession's king in the modern game, isn't it? You just don't kick it away.
Can I labour the point, Jace? Their 4 wins have been against West Coast and Carlton by a total of 15 points, and St Kilda and Melbourne in 9 weeks.
Where the pressure on them probably wasn't as great, and you had a little bit more time to use the footy. I worry about the forward setup, Jared. Well, I won't say have they become one-dimensional, but they're far too one-dimensional, and the reliance on Travis Cloke, he either has to have a day out or they seem devoid of options.
Yeah, the lack of Jamie Elliott, who's had a bad 6 weeks through injury himself, that really has made them the one-dimensional side that you speak about. Jesse White, as you said, hasn't really come on.
And they're short down the back. I mean, the Essendon blokes just jumped over the top 20 times yesterday.
Yeah, Nick Maxwell wasn't comfortable in a key defensive
But even
post.
if you are one-dimensional, it means the ball is going to you. Travis Cloke, who some suggest was sick on the weekend, so you question his ability to play at his very best, but...
He's stronger than that.
I haven't seen him go to ground that easily.
No, I mean, there's something going on with Travis if he's feigning for free kicks like that.
Hooker's having a good year, isn't he?
Hooker is having a cracking year. I mean, right now, if the All-Australian side would be picked, he would be getting plenty of votes.
You know, there are the players that he's played on, and the happy Hooker's very, because he's a much happier player now than he's been in previous years. He's done good jobs on lots of big names.
Gun forwards in the competition every week.
And I think if you add to that, he's one of the highest intercept marking players in the competition. In fact, he may be ranked number 1 for memory. That's a darn good year.
59,000 at this game. Not enough, is it?
Do you reckon the time had a big impact on it?
Well, look, I'm not saying it had a massive impact, but I think had it been 2:10 and not 3:20 on a winter Sunday afternoon, I reckon we would have got at least 7,000 or 8,000 more. Now, that doesn't make a massive difference, but I can't understand why on a winter Sunday afternoon you would start a game in the middle of the afternoon and not at 2 o'clock.
An hour's not going to make that big a difference, is it?
Shouldn't.
Well, the hour difference is, Jared, you get home before it's dark and before it's too cold if you do it at 2 o'clock.
It's getting dark at 5:30.
Why would you do it, though? You say
not everybody lives 100 metres from the MCG, Michael, like your good self. Carlisle, we have to address again. I know we did at the top of the program, but the level of contested mark was the key area for him to, I think, build his season on. If they are to play finals and play a significant role in the finals, this may be the turning point for their whole year.
Yeah, look, it's great to see him doing this, but again, he's getting a matchup that suits him. A much smaller opponent in Nick Maxwell. He got his confidence up, but he does look like he's got the tools to be, you know, a player that can have a great impact in that key forward post. And they need him to. They desperately need someone forward so that we're not putting too much pressure on a Joe Danaher type to try and kick goals for them.
There's another merit at Essendon, Mike. I don't want you to get too shaky here. There's another. It's not Roger, it's Zach.
I like him, Jared. He's quick and he's got good skills, hasn't he?
He's terrific. He's been touted as the most skilled player in the top 10 of that draft, and you can see why. Ball in hand around goals, he does some
Well, I like this one better.
Fantastic things.
I mean, this is the one. Oh, look, he backed himself there, didn't he? He knew he could kick that.
Beautiful finish.
Yeah.
A lot to like about them. They are building with a little bit of momentum. The team that really worries me, though, Jared, is Port Adelaide.
Well, we'll get to them in just a second.
I need to talk about it.
I know you do, but there's a bit of a war going on, it seems, off the field with the Collingwood president, the Swans president and the Swans Footy Club, Michael, and this is taking your fancy.
I like that one, that Ed sitting across on a wrecking ball from Clive Palmer. Now, actually, Andrew Pridham, the Swans president, likened Eddie to Clive Palmer.
In his presidential speech.
And Eddie smacked him back. Look, my view about Ed, I love his energy and his passion. We always say that. But Eddie's an intellectual snob, not slob, snob. Eddie believes that he's got right on his side every time he gets involved in an issue. And if you don't accept his view, he takes the Broady approach and tries to bludgeon you to death.
Well, what's the view?
Well, he said of Andrew Pridham, he said that Andrew's club, the Swans, voted against GWS coming into the competition. Incorrect. He said also on his show last night on Fox that Andrew Pridham had been around for 5 minutes. He's been on the board for 13 years. And Andrew Pridham whacked him back. John Longmire's not going to be involved in the Australian team and the international rules because Eddie's involved. So this is getting to a serious level.
It is. It's open warfare at the present time. The question is, where's it going to finish?
It's all derived from COLA, the cost of living allowance. To me, that is so simplistic of Eddie to say that COLA has won premierships for the northern teams. It's an insult in Brisbane's case to Andrew Ireland, Lee Matthews and Michael Voss, and in the Swans' case to Richard Collis, Andrew Ireland and Paul Roos. The COLA allowance hasn't made the difference between an ordinary team and a premiership team.
I hear, but do you believe playing this out in a public forum, having two club leaders going at each other, serves a purpose?
No.
Is it highlighting an issue? Is it getting a point across?
Who started it?
Well, sometimes you've got to be the bigger man just to end it, don't you? And let it go.
Look,
maybe if one of them picked up the phone, they might...
Well, the Sydney people, they're not happy, are they? No,
they're filthy about the second assault on the academies as well, and they see that as a continuation of the COLA issue, and they believe that he's driving.
He always says that he's putting his footy hat on and it's for the good of the game. Well, surely an academy in Sydney is for the good of the game, is it not?
Absolutely.
OK, move on. Port Adelaide.
Yes, need to talk about them because the wheels are falling off. Lost 4 out of 5 now, and the numbers don't look great.
No.
When you have a look at some of these, in particular, their efficiency has gone from 7th best to 15th. Contested possessions. Now, this is one that would worry a coach when you start to drop off and you're in the bottom 8 of the competition for that. And then down the bottom, not as many inside 50s. And when they do, look at the efficiency of scoring. They've gone from 2nd to 16th. And we spoke to Kane Corns last week and he said their conversion wasn't great. They're not converting their opportunities into genuine scores, are they? And that's a real concern.
And I don't think you can put it back simply to the absence of a couple of players, Trent Gove and Adapati Carlisle, because once again, like Collingwood, their energy that used to turn the ball over with their attack on the man, that is 50% of what it was.
Got a couple of things I want to show you. Remember how we marvelled when they just took the game on? They'd get the ball down back, run in waves and just decimate the opposition. Have a look at this. So they start and they just try to make it up as they go. But Richmond's pressure was good enough and Port weren't clean enough to actually get their way through, and they ended up making errors that hurt them. And Richmond would kick goals on the turnover. Now, it was fantastic pressure from Richmond, which also begs the question, where the hell's that been for the last 15 weeks? But to see Port make these mistakes and all of a sudden that superior running ability had disappeared.
How much is it a lack of intensity? How much of it is people have started to work out that they are going to go helter-skelter through the middle and they're ready for it?
It's one thing to know what they're going to do. It's another to be good enough to stop it. The pressure level was good. I wonder if perhaps the legs aren't as fresh as they were in the first half of the season, Port Adelaide, when they just really took everyone by storm,
But the legs didn't account for that disposal, did they? They just, under pressure,
I didn't see them running as hard as often, Chirrut.
And it's reflecting as we look at some of the individual scores too. I mean, the champion data rankings points don't lie, and I think specifically the likes of a Chad Wingard has dropped off significantly. Let's have a look at some of their stars. Ebert's a little bit of a different kettle of fish because he's moved into a tagging role. Dom Cassisi's out of the side. Wouldn't be surprised if he comes back in.
Would you tag with Ebert?
Well, I think if you can get away with having Ebert as your tagger, it means that your level in the midfield has risen above. And I think at this stage they were a better side when he was running freer and Cassisi was in the side. Wingard is the key along with Westhoff. They're the two forward of centre stars. Wingard's had an average year for mine. Well, even when he was playing well in the first half, it was only quarter by quarter, not game by game. Compared to last year, he is going fairly ordinarily.
I've got to say one thing I want to talk about. Jack Riewoldz's performance on the weekend. This is the bloke that provokes more debate than just about anyone in the game. I thought he was a star. He only kicked 3 goals, but he did some things in that match where he'd compete 1 against 2, he'd cover for a defensive act for someone that had got caught out, he'd spoil when he needed to, he brought players into the game, he tackled, he chased, he did all those things. Like just this one here, they were going quick from the kick out after a point had been scored, and if they got over the back, they were away.
Hey, Jace, it's
Tackles,
round 17.
Second efforts.
It's round 17. Where was this intensity and this attack on the footy and the man in the previous 16 weeks?
I hear you. And you see these tape and you go, well, this is what we want to see week in, week out. He kicked 3 goals, a couple of critical ones when they needed them. There were also gestures that said a lot to me. His elation when the final siren went. He grabbed the jumper and showed it to the supporters when he was going off. But that's where Richmond have gone wrong. They need 22 players doing that every week. Not doing it once in a blue moon.
There's a kid that's come into this team and given him some lift in intensity in the last month, Anthony Miles.
Good, very good. Inside midfield, I love it.
He works hard. I think it's contagious, isn't it? When you see young kids do that.
It's contagious the other way as well. But when a young kid comes off the GWS list, he comes and trains at your club, he comes up from the rookie list, that's a good story.
It is.
Now, I've got one for you, Mike. I'm pretty sure, I don't like to make big statements, big outlandish statements. I'm pretty sure I saw goal of the year on the weekend.
Yeah, you did like this one.
Matt White just took it upon himself. Now, you have a look at Stephen Morris, who's running inside, and this is a genuine chase with intent. White had no option, so he just said, I better keep running. Found another gear when you thought he was running at top pace. And then he's run 150 metres and kicked the winner. Where he got the energy to kick it at the end is beyond me. But if I see a better goal than that, I can't wait to see it.
Well, it's such a good goal. We're going to have another look at it in abstract. But talk about big statements. I was chatting to Dwayne Russell tonight, and he was tempted to go with goal of the century.
With that one. With that one.
Do you like it?
Until next week.
What about the goal?
I liked it. I like the way White goes about his footy. And he's finished that. We'll show one later of a Melbourne bloke who had covered similar territory, kicked it out on the full from 20. White's kicked his from just inside 50.
Drill down a bit deeper on the Gold Coast Suns. They were your disappointment, the loser of the week.
Well, they were, and the Bulldogs went into the game losing Ryan Griffin, their best player, just before the game. I like what Brendan McCartney's done the last 2 weeks. He dropped Higgins. He made a statement about McRae. They went in without Griffin, and they came from behind and won.
I love it when players respond, in particular young players, when they're challenged by the coach and they respond. Because Jackson McRae was made the sub last week. We're all getting, getting carried away with his numbers. And Brendan McCartney says it's not about numbers. You've got to do the defensive things. You've got to play the team structures. You've got to do the unselfish things. Kids come out and had 40 plus, kicked up, done everything.
And he didn't belittle him, did he? What he said, it was a statement of fact.
He challenged him.
Yeah, but it wasn't. He didn't belittle him personally.
Love the response though.
They've got some good youngsters coming through.
Have.
Rovat's another one on the weekend. We saw Hunter is another one, I think, had an excellent game. And I reckon they won this game twice. They were in control, kicking it into the wind in the first quarter. And then the Suns charged back, and then they were given a challenge at half-time, and they were good enough to do it. But some of their work into the wind in the first quarter was superb.
Jason, do you think this loss will cost Gold Coast its place in the finals?
Well, we're at the business end of the year and you can't afford to drop games that you probably should be penciling in as wins, particularly when you've got the likes of Essendon charging. Even though Adelaide got beaten, they're not going to go away in a hurry because they're playing a good brand of footy. Other teams trying to cling to their spots inside that. You can't drop these.
Let me show you. This is typifies the attitude, the different attitude this week from the Gold Coast. Have a look at this in this quarter here. I mean, just that sort of stuff went up. Now, you can do that. I mean, lots of blokes do it, but they were sloppy and
very
loose.
Early.
Yeah.
They were off, weren't they?
Yeah, and you could tell looking at that this is not the same team that we saw 7 days earlier.
A lot of fumbling. A lot of fumbling.
Sometimes you just got to learn to handle your big wins. And they had the big win last week, and they looked like a club that mentally was still involved with last week's victory and hadn't addressed that and put it to bed and moved on.
But Bluey McKenna and his team would have been aware of that.
Understand
they would have been telling them
Bluey
that for 7 days.
You can talk to the door sometimes, Mike, with footballers. If they're not listening, if they go home and they watch the replay and they go home and read the newspaper, it can take a little bit longer. But there's always a time of reckoning, and it was in Cairns for them.
It was.
This weekend. Bontempelli has become a star. The Dogs don't want to talk him up, but we're going to, because he's got some extraordinary skills. Have a look at this 4 magnificent skills, Mike. Just the one hand.
If you're a Bulldog supporter and you saw this passage of play alone, you'd be reasonably excited. A one-hander from Bontempelli to stringer for another one-hander. And they don't quite finish as cleanly as they'd like, but in the end they get the goal. It's a pretty handy passage.
Their challenge now is to finish the season off well. Last year they finished powerfully. They've given too big of a start this year, but if they can finish with a string of wins, they can go into next season with a lot of confidence.
Mick Malthouse is in the news again. He had a heated discussion that we believe with Cameron Ling on the weekend, and I think it was all about how often he was being seen on the scoreboard at the SCG, and he had a fair crack at Lingy. Lingy's had a crack back.
I didn't know Lingy worked out of the scoreboard?
No, he didn't work at the scoreboard, but from all reports, they've addressed it personally, but I've got a feeling it's going to be a pretty big story tomorrow. Well,
Mick took to Lingy as the representative of 7 for seeing himself so much on the scoreboard, as we understand it.
It's an odd target.
Terse words.
Odd target.
But to Lingy's credit, he didn't roll over.
No, well, look.
He said to Mick, as I understand, he said, don't talk to me like that.
We've got great character, Lingy. He'll stick up for himself. You don't lead a club and have no spine.
The worry for Mick's coached 800 games of footy. I mean, he knows the cameras are on him and he's under pressure, but I'm surprised at how his loss of self-control.
Well, I think
generally,
just looking at the vision of the match, it looked as if he was making a statement as well. That the lighting of the box seemed to be a lot dimmer than everybody else's box. There's the Sydney Swans box, and there's the Carlton box, and all you can see is the reflection. Although you can see Hyundai, they'd be pretty happy with their exposure.
If Mick's going to talk discipline to his players, Jason, doesn't he have to exert discipline of his own?
Do as I say, not as I do.
Well, you can't do that, can you?
No, I hear. But look, they're going through a really tough time, and I think a little bit of the pressure's starting to tell on all of them, isn't it?
Yeah, that's not... Look...
It's no excuse.
No, it's not. And look, you'll think this is gratuitous, but Mick's going to finish as the longest-serving coach in the history of the game. It would be sad to see him go out with everyone saying good riddance. And he risks doing that if he keeps offending people. Well,
he's got some issues on the ground, as we know. He's questioned Chris Judd during the week, and there was diverse views on the methodology and the reason behind that. I actually thought it was a good challenge to Chris Judd. Make your mind up and make a strong decision.
Would you think, now this is funny from a journo saying this, would you think he should have had that discussion in private with Juddy?
Well, yes, and he probably has, but I think he was also putting it out there.
If I were Judd, I would have read that Mick was talking to me and suggesting strongly that I don't go on.
It wasn't all about the one bloke, though. Was he not talking a little bit more generally? And then we've all decided it's definitely about Chris Judd.
Who did you think he was talking about?
Well, I think he's talking about senior players in particular, because he also mentioned that a few have gone on too long. And you want all your champs to be remembered at their best.
Well, that's where I disagree with Mick and with you.
I remember him anyway, though.
I don't have any different a view of Darren Glass, for instance,
no,
because he went on a little bit. But to me, the issue is Chris Judd is probably at the moment in making up his mind. Am I going on? Am I not? He just wants a strong decision so they can plan and go forward.
Does he go on?
I don't think he does. My gut feel is we'll have an announcement in the next 2 to 3 weeks, and we'll I think he'll pull the pin.
Would you counsel him one way or the other?
No. Juddy will make up. He'll make up his mind. He's an intelligent man. He's
all of that. He's
got
all
a
of
good
that.
handle on everything. He's got plenty in his life.
It's hard to walk away from $500,000 a year, isn't it?
Oh, I don't think that's the driving force for him.
What does he say to Chris Yarran, who didn't go back hard enough on one incident, but the one that really probably peeved me more was the fact that Buddy Franklin has just ripped the guts out of this match, and you see Chris Yarran having a chat to him and just having a bit of a good feel about things.
It's...
I mean, you just don't have the smile.
But the brothers do that, don't
I understand the brothers, Mike, but not for mine.
No, it's odd. It's unusual, isn't it?
In particular, Buddy Franklin has just bumped one of the other Carlton players.
Yeah, that's right.
He said, get out, mate, I'm destroying you. And then they exchanged pleasantries. It's not a great look.
It is making waves up there, though, Buddy Franklin. Got an excerpt from a column from Buzz Rothfield, who's the sports editor of the Daily Telegraph. He's an influential figure up there. He's a bolted-on rugby league man, and he wasn't a Buddy fan early in the piece, but have a listen to this. Highlight, the Swans' 12th win in a row over Carlton on Saturday night to equal a 79-year record. They are the most exciting team in Australian sport in any code. And he told me off air today that he turned off the rugby league and he put on the AFL. That's a big concession from Buzz.
The other thing that might have excited him just a little, excited me, Gary Rowan played the best game of footy he's played since he broke his leg. Rowan and Jetta get it right, Jason. They are going to be more fearsome than ever in the finals. I mean, he's got his pace back.
This is what we want to see from Gary Rowan. It's been a real struggle, and we know how hard it is to come back from broken legs, don't we?
Yep.
I mean, it is fantastic to see him in that sort of form. He's got a lot to offer. He's exciting. He's got that unbridled enthusiasm about him. Just want him to have a good run, fitness and
one final one for you, goal-kicking legend, before we put you in the different chair. There's another bloke up there kicking big goals. Buddy Franklin, he's got a new kicking coach called Nick Davis. You worked with him for 10 years and you couldn't straighten
I didn't work with him for 10 years.
Have a look at this. Inside forward 50. Buddy is running straighter now than I've ever seen him before and kicking the ball magnificently.
Yeah, if I can again play the devil's advocate, the ones where you've got him on straight run-ups, he's 20 metres out. And the ones where he arcs out are a lot closer to the 50-metre arc. But, look, he's been toying with the idea of running straighter at different stages, and I hope he continues to do that, because the straighter he runs, the better his conversion will become, and we want him to improve his conversion.
You wanted the comforts of the boardroom, didn't you? Didn't want to get in your tracksuit and get out on the wet ground. And
That's unfair, Mike.
That is unfair, but it's a good note to go to the break on. We did have some vision in kicking it outside.
Yeah, and you edited
We're not showing that. We'll come back with the latest Hawk legend and to have a chat to him about a great career.
People often try to compare full forwards, the likes of Lockett, Modra, Ablett. However, there are a number of assets that separate Jason from all the others. They are his ability to keep his eye on the ball, his ability to play in front, his uncompromising attack on the football, and his unseemingly uncanny ability to never get flustered or lose concentration during the course of the game.
Now that is play of the year.
Above all, it was the simple fact that he was defensively superior to all those of his era.
Dunstall, great chase. Sensational running by the full forward. Setting up for Kennedy. Unselfishly out wide to Russo. He'll bang for goal and put it through. Set up by Jason Dunstall with brilliant football.
And a brilliant footballer indeed. It was a great tribute from John Kennedy Jr. at a gala function last Saturday night where they had the 25-year reunion of the only back-to-back premiership winning side at Hawthorn. The 88 and 89 premiership sides gathered. They celebrated hard and they inducted our special guest tonight as a legend of the Hawks. Congratulations again, Jason. You must have been absolutely thrilled. Now, great words from one of your teammates.
Yeah, they were. Look, it's a tremendous honour, Jared. And I've got to say, to be brutally honest, I was a little emotional and extremely humbled by the club's decision to consider me worthy. So,
well, if you were emotional, it just goes to show how great it was, because I've never seen Jason emotional before.
No, I believe that, and I saw the vision I saw, it proved that. Your own view was that Alan Jeans would be elevated, wasn't it?
Yeah, I thought he would be, and I'm sure he will be very, very soon. So I was perhaps a touch uncomfortable from that perspective, that of the group, he wasn't put up. But again, I would never downplay what a great honour it is and how thrilled I am.
Well, there's the company you're in.
It's ridiculous company, Jared, which is why it's such a humbling experience.
The man regarded as the father figure, don't think do, John Kennedy, Lee Matthews, the great Graham Arthur, Tucky, Hutto, what a legend he was, David Park, and of course Jason Dunstall.
Jace, let me take you back to 1984. You're a uni student in Queensland. You go down to Tassie to play a game of football with Scotty McIver and Michael Gibson. Fitzroy invites you to train with them on your way back. Pick up the story from there.
We trained for a week with Fitzroy. They were training at Junction Oval, that's right. Got a free pair, scored a pair of boots. They took us down to Pier. We picked up a pair of boots, which was great. I got ripped into by Bernie Quinlan on the first training session because I didn't call him back into the ball, which was my fault, obviously, but told me in no uncertain terms, young bloke, do the right thing.
What was the message when you left?
Well, I wasn't given the message, but I heard them. Apparently, I don't want to attribute to anyone in case I get the wrong person, Mike. But they were a big rap on Scotty McIver, but they weren't overly keen on the fat bloke.
I reckon,
I reckon
it was the last, one of the boys that sat in that chair for a bloke who used to have the
Robert Walls?
baseball bat.
Wolsey was the coach, but his hand passed the blame to Brian Walsh, who was an assistant coach. But so you go to Hawthorn. Why the Hawks ahead of Fitzroy?
Because they're a more stable club. I mean, I had the two offers. They offered me $5,000 to go to Fitzroy and $10,000 to go to Hawthorn. So neither deal was going to make me rich.
I think it was a good decision.
Great decision.
But look, and I was very fortunate to go to the right club, right time, where an opening came up in a position that I was fortunate enough to slip into.
Can I ask you what you would have done if you hadn't have played football? My understanding is you were school captain. You're a highly intelligent man.
I wasn't school captain.
Well, my understanding was you were a highly intelligent man and you had the world at your feet. What would you have done had you not pulled on a football boot?
It's very interesting. Look, I was extremely fortunate to get a very good education from my parents. So I was going to uni, but even there I didn't know.
You're studying law, weren't you?
I did law. I did some human movement, did some applied science. I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do, to be brutally honest. So I kind of stumbled into it, Jared. The opportunity came up. I thought I'd go and see what happens. I can always, resume the studies at a later date, and never ended up going back.
Why didn't you resume your studies?
Because I had too much fun playing footy.
But at that stage, footy wasn't a profession.
No, true. It was difficult, though, to fit in the course I was doing with training, and I guess I was just having such a good time playing football that I thought I'd go and work for a while rather than study.
Why were you went to a school as honors? Did you go to Churchie?
Churchie.
Yeah, which is a rugby school, is it not?
Yes.
Yeah. How did you get into AFL?
I started when I was 5 years old because you couldn't play rugby at that age, so I just wanted to play a team sport, a football, and the only game you could get in at that age was the under-7s of Australian rules, Mike, back then.
Your first year at Hawthorn, Lee Matthews was finishing his career at full forward. Is it true that you played in the seconds in the back pocket?
Yeah, for about a quarter, I reckon.
Oh, is that all?
Yeah.
Is that all? Okay.
They worked out pretty quickly that perhaps I wasn't suited to that end, Mike.
Did you help them work that out?
Yeah, well, not deliberately. Just couldn't get near it.
What turned it around? Because you were a bit roly-poly, didn't like training much. When did the light go on?
I'll tell you right now. I'm not sure I was roly-poly, because when I look back at that vision, I've never looked as slim or as agile. But I didn't have the fitness base because we never, perhaps I never grasped what was actually required to play at that level. And I was never an endurance athlete at the best of times anyway, but I was a long way off when I first got down. So improving fitness was one of the first big hurdles.
One of the stories I did with you was an interview, and I asked you the question about the most skillful player you'd played with.
Yep.
And I knew this bloke was skillful, but I was surprised at you unequivocally and just immediately said Darren Jarman.
He's a magician, an absolute magician. If you see Jars on his day, he is unbeatable. He's untouchable.
Let's have a look at this.
One-on-one, they couldn't get near him. But see this pass here, where I don't have to break stride. He could do that left and right foot, and you couldn't even tell which foot was his natural one. And I've seen him do things at ground level. I've seen him in traffic, and he looks like he's going half pace. The game's in slow motion for him, and they couldn't lay a finger on him.
There are a lot of legends in the sides that you played in. Chris Langford, he's on the commission. He's also a member of the Hall of Fame. But one seems to always miss out, Chris Mew, at centre-half back.
Teddy's a ripper, and I think I agree with you. I think he's one of the most underrated players. It's never quite given the dues that he deserves because he played centre-half back on all the greats. I'm talking on all the greats through that era, and I can't remember him lowering his colours. He had a crook back where he couldn't bend below his knees for about the last 5 years of his career. He used to mark with his head down like that, not even looking at the ball, and he'd take him every time. He was a ripper, Mewey.
1992, Jason, you kick 145 goals. You runner up in the Brownlow, and you kick 17 goals against Richmond. Now, my memory of the Richmond game was that you could have, was within your scope to equal or beat Fred Fanning's record of 18 in a game, and you almost didn't want to do it. Is that true?
No, it's not that I didn't want to do it, and I wouldn't say it was within my scope, but...
You're one short.
I was one short.
Yeah.
I wasn't... And I don't want to be disrespectful when I say this, but because I come from Queensland, I didn't have a great grasp of the history of the game. And records were never on my mind to start with. So I saw that I'd broken the Waverley record because they flashed it up on the scoreboard. I wasn't thinking about Fred Fanning's record of 18. And to be brutally honest, I wasn't aware of it at the time. And I was just chasing my opponent upfield. And it wasn't a matter of saying I could have kicked more. That's just what we did.
One of the most important games in your career, and it was a game that you started and you kicked 10 goals, was the merger game. What's your memories of that?
96, last round, it was amazing because there was talk that the two clubs would merge. There was something like 65,000 there, night game at the MCG. It had a finals atmosphere about it. We had to win to make the finals. I needed 9 goals to get to 100. And it went down to the wire, and it was decided by one kick.
It was a great, one of my favourite games. Jason, you were as disciplined as any footballer I've ever seen play the game.
Did you ever get reported?
Yeah, I did 3 times. Two of them got thrown out. I got a week in round 1 of 86 for retaliating because a big brute by the name of Rod Ashman gave me a clip.
You should have been a lawyer. Argued your own case twice.
Well, that discipline on the field. Why are you such a maniac on the tennis court and the golf course? Why are you such a brat?
A brat?
You are?
Well, do you know what? I think there are times when we all struggle to deal with our own inadequacies. And I have a lot of inadequacies on the tennis court and on the golf course.
Didn't have any on the footy field. Congratulations. It was a magnificent honour, justly deserved, and congratulations. It would have been a great night.
Dirty that we didn't show the Cooperoo footage because I looked so thin. Long hair.
Stay tuned. We've got Mike's Mad Minute coming up after the next break. We'll be back shortly with more footy.
Melbourne tend to play the way they played in the second half as a rule, so it can be difficult, you know, to really score heavily against them. But having said that, I reckon I'm going to take that back because that's a cop-out. We had plenty of chances. We missed in front of goal. We had some really nice opportunities to score that we blew, and they found it really hard to score. You know, but for some free kicks and a few bits of lazy play, they wouldn't have scored much at all. But yeah. So no, I'm not going to talk about the opposition. We should have been better.
Chris Scott lamenting his own side's inability to score, but also I think opening up the door on what is being discussed regarding the Demons, and that is they can't score, so they can't win games.
They've lost their momentum, Melbourne, haven't they? The Melbourne supporters had renewed optimism in the first 8 weeks, but it's gone backwards in the last month.
Well, we sat here in the studio watching 2 games, that game and also the North St Kilda game, and there were 2 teams that just did not score at all. But have a look at Melbourne, the way they've dropped off, and their ability to actually kick any score that's going to be competitive.
But that's the execution of the skills, Jason. The confidence must have gone because they are making mistakes that junior footballers wouldn't make.
Correct. And that's that has to be a mindset thing. You can't tell me they don't have the ability to hit a bloke 20 metres away or get it somewhere near the goal.
Rowan Bale's first miss. That's out on the full there. Now here he is.
Dean Kent.
Just
strikes the middle of the ball when you're trying to kick it around the corner. I mean, that's a lazy kick. Kick that off one step. Loopy hand pass, misses the target. I mean, these are the sort of things that just cruel you, but they're better than that. They are, but it has to be in the head because you can't be that bad.
They've had a
you don't make it to this level if you can't execute simple skills.
I noticed, though, a lot of their first possession is back, and I'm sure Roosie isn't saying go back all the time, but Jack Grimes in particular, across that half-back line, when he first came onto the scene, there was a great hope for him to be this young half-back who used to just flourish off the half-back line, and he was a brilliant kick, but we don't see that from Jack Grimes all the time, or very often now. It's always defensive pokes.
There's a siege mentality throughout the footy club.
I've got to tell you, I've got no problem with kicking backwards or laterally if it's going to open up the play. What bugs me the most in the game is when players don't even look forward. they just look for the easy one to get rid of it so it's not their responsibility. If there's a little bloke out back, which there normally is, they go there automatically. I hate that. You've got to look downfield first.
Jude, I want to ask you about... I came in the tail end of Lee Matthews' comment on your radio program tonight. Did Lee say that he thought Jack Watson made the wrong decision about his sporting career, that he should have stayed with basketball?
Yeah, he did. It was pretty solid stuff from Lee, but I think it was just addressing what most people are frustrated with Jack, that if he's 10% down on his mental preparation and his intensity, he falls away in the physical elements of the game. We know ball in hand, he's a pretty good operator, and Lee said exactly that.
Was it a serious statement or a little tongue-in-cheek?
I took it as with a serious message. I mean, Lee, I don't think has ever gravitated to Jack Watts at this stage. His early comments were, didn't
he was
see
critical of him.
any great evidence that he should have been the #1 pick. And Jack has gone up, and he was also, like Melbourne, he's gradually losing the momentum.
They've fallen off. Yeah, there was a passage of play. We saw lots of terrible passages from Melbourne early. Passage of play from Geelong in the second quarter that reminded me of the old Geelong.
It's great moving to the footy after Selwood gets away with the throw there, but forget the throw for the moment. Have a look at the way they go through the corridor, and it's Johnson, Motlop, Selwood, the three blokes that tore Melbourne apart, and Christensen may have just snuck on from the bench. You can see Jetta at the bottom of the screen, couldn't get anywhere near him, but that's a great passage.
That run down the centre and their ability to break the lines and kick long and kick accurately, that was the difference. I mean, they looked 15, 20 goals apart on the weekend.
No, they did, absolutely. And Hamish McIntosh, I think, was important in that. Yeah. His re-emergence in the side over the last couple of weeks has been really important, and he will be going forward. Mike, the Saints went down to Tassie. It was a pretty reasonable day, albeit freezing cold down in Tassie. The Kangaroos split them open in the first quarter. They fought back, but it's going to be a long road down at Saints.
3 goals in a game of footy. I mean, it doesn't give you a lot to... I mean, I think if you can get beaten by a lot, but if you're kicking goals, there's something for the supporters to hang their hat on, isn't it?
See what I found hardest to swallow? And Alan Richardson was quoted as saying they had too many passengers, up to 8 players that didn't contribute. It's okay if you don't have a great game, but the one thing that's completely unacceptable is your effort level. And there's no excuse for not having a reasonable effort level.
What do they do with Joe Montagna?
Well, that's an interesting one as well, because you've got a really skillful, experienced player. He was given a run-with role on the weekend and
got chopped up in the first quarter.
He did. And look, Boomer, I think, ended up with 28 and kicked a couple of goals, so he obviously wasn't particularly effective. But he was poor the week before Montagna.
Don't you want Montagna in a creative role?
Well, you do, but is he winning enough?
But in a creative role, he's being tagged. And he was tagged the week before and couldn't have drawn one. So they're trying to get him into the game by saying, OK, go and work off Boomer Harvey. But he didn't win any of his own ball or enough of his own ball to make that last.
He's dispirited, I reckon.
And that's going to be the challenge.
I think the captain, Nick, is the same. I mean, I'm not sure that they're going to the footy with a lot of enthusiasm because they know their fate.
Well, you know you're going to get bolted against any team that's half decent, and that can be difficult. It's not an easy game when that's the case, but they need the leadership of these players so much.
Showed it.
So much.
Armitage showed it at the weekend.
We spoke about them a couple of weeks ago when you had a good look at them, a forensic look. But the relevant assumption or assessment was they may be worse next year, and that's going to be even tougher on those senior group.
I don't know. I mean, I think you do have to bottom out before you look up. Alan Richardson's just got to try to keep the attitude positive amongst the younger blokes and hope that it spreads.
If they're not at the bottom yet, they can certainly see it.
Friday night, I thought I've never seen a side smother the ball as well. And Sam Mitchell, who's one of the great midfielders of the modern era, he did a classic smother which just really underpinned his game. But it was a game that had all the classic Mitchell attributes.
Yeah, look, Jace, I think you should have praised this bloke. He's not just a good player.
No, he's a Hawthorn great. He's a star. Yeah. And he shouldn't be able to smother when you've got short arms and short legs like him. But his effort on Friday night, I thought was first class, because let's not forget the fact that he's only been back a couple of weeks from a long-term injury. He's as important as anyone in the mix for the Hawks, because he gets inside ball, he uses it well, and his hands are so good, and that short chip kick and lateral movement so good, brings all the players in the game around him. And if you have a look at his best and fairest record...
Well, let's have a look at the honour board.
He's won 4 of them, but it doesn't end there. He's won 4 of them. He's also been in the top 3 another 4 times.
It's a difficult one, but, you know, I love these comparisons. Who's had the bigger contribution, Mitchell or Hodge, to the Hawthorn's last 10 years?
Oh, look, Mitchell's your consistent star that plays well week in, week out. Hodge is your spiritual leader, crash down brick walls, drag the blokes along with him. That's a really, really hard one.
Well, you're not going to answer it, so answer me this. Does Alistair Clarkson get the credit that he deserves? Because I thought tactically assessed the Crows magnificently. The Crows have changed a lot in going down the line. He opened them up so quickly with the foot skills. It was a game that was, I think, tactically won as much as anything else. Dangerfield had 40. Crouch had 40. They had their big guns playing fairly well up back. And I think that their tactics in the early part split them open.
Big numbers for opposition midfielders has never bothered Clarkson or the Hawks. We saw Ablett when they played got 45. Swan, Pendlebury always get 30 plus when they play them. The structures are brilliant. And Alistair Clarkson, but look, I think he's a genius. And you can accuse me of bias, and that's fine. I probably am. But I hope people understand how good a coach he is. And you don't win a couple of premierships by accident.
The third one would elevate him to the level that you're talking about. I want to ask you this about Dangerfield. He got the ball 40 times. No one works harder than him. Why could he not get clear the other night? There was no run from him. He got it and he had to give it. How did they do that?
Well, I think that's just the structures that Jason's talking about around the ground.
Explain to me how they did it. Just more numbers.
More numbers around it, and clearly he's a magnet. They look at Dangerfield, and if there's a contest, and I'm a Hawthorn bloke, you're saying Dangerfield's a fair chance to get it. He did unload. I think he'd be a more damaging player if he did get a bit more outside ball, but Crouch is going to become a major asset to him because he's a damaging midfielder.
Before we leave the Hawks, I want to ask you about Jonathan Segler. Now, he was on Collingwood's list. Yep. I can't believe this kid was let go.
He's a ripper, Segs, and he's a terrific fella.
He's now your best ruckman.
He's loving the opportunity to play week in, week out. And he's never had that before. He's been up for a week,
kicked a couple of goals, 12 score involvements.
He's hitting the scoreboard every week, which is, in fact, they got 2 goals from McAvoy and 2 from Segler.
Speaking of ruckman, I go to Perth and Adelaide a lot. I go to Perth. Sandilands is a lock for the All-Australian side. I go to Adelaide. Sauce Jacobs is a lock for the All-Australian side. It's going to be a tough decision. They may go with both of them, but there is a major honour in being the number one. And if you have a look at the decision they're going to make statistically, and it's always difficult on stats alone, it's probably just marginally with 7 games to go in favour of Sauce Jacobs.
Well, we have to defer to you because you're our authority when it comes to ruckman, Jared. I mean, they are all your love children, and Nat Nui's in the same boat.
You don't like them at all.
I do like them. I do like them. Don't go down that
Let's talk, while we're in Perth and talking ruckman.
No, don't worry about them. Worry about that from
We've done that.
Well, who are you going with?
Sandilands. So, you know, he was the most overrated player in the competition 6 months ago, according to you blokes. Oh, and now he's all Australian ruckman. What's happening at West Coast? Is Dean Cox being squeezed out?
I'm not sure, to be honest. He's got 8 games to go for memory for his 300th. I suspect that they'll get him to 300, but they've got a decision to make because Scott Lysette hasn't.
He's got 8 to go, has he?
I think he's got 8 to go.
Well, how many have we got left? 8?
Well, he's not going to get there this year. No. Scott Lysette will field some offers to go back to Adelaide. He has yet to sign. There was a story in the press on the weekend that he's put it off to the end of the year, which is a significant sign. But they've also got Callum Sinclair. They've got 4, and 4 is a lot of ruckman to keep happy in the one club. They've got Nat Nui at the present time, who isn't fit enough, who's coming back from an Achilles heel. He needs to basically get through to the end of the season and start again.
Wow, start again?
Well, start again with a fitness base. So you can't play without a fitness base.
Oh, well, they keep playing him, don't they?
We need a break, Michael. I've just been told. We'll come back with Mike's Mad Minute straight after this, if he hasn't been mad enough already.
One night at training we had kick to kick, you know, the old-fashioned kick to kick. You get into fours and you practice your marking, and I was paired with Gary Ablett. And look, I rated myself, I could mark against the best of them. I reckon the ball was kicked up and down 20 times, and I was one-on-one with Gary Ablett, and the only time I got it was when he dropped it once. Well, and I walked to Tommy Hafey after that and said, look, Bill McMaster's right, we've got something really special here, and he was. Very special.
He was.
Yeah.
He's a bloke with the same name that went through the Geelong Falcons under you.
Yeah.
Gary Ablett Jr. is pretty special too, isn't he?
Very special.
How
very
special?
I personally think Gary Ablett Jr. is the greatest player that's ever played the game.
Wow.
A lot of specials, and I'll tell you what, he was a special player in his own right, Mick Turner.
He was.
And he's a madman in charge of a stand-up paddleboard right now. Looking forward to him because he's a man not short of opinions, and he's very black and white. Looking forward to Mick Turner. What a player he was. Mike, you've got the open mic after the program. What about your Mad Minute?
Well, look, I cannot understand, Jason, league football, why players don't play to the whistle. Now, this is the Collingwood-Essendon game. Heath Hocking's the last man in out of 25, and he picks the ball up and kicks a goal.
2 things I'd say about that. 14 blokes have stopped.
Yep.
Expecting the whistle.
And that is poor, because you don't anticipate, you play. But having said that, is there any danger of blowing the whistle? Because one bloke's laid on it.
Well, that's true.
One bloke's hatched it.
6 Collingwood blokes have got their arms up in the air, and Hocking picks the ball up and kicks a goal.
Well, I've got some sympathy for the players there because I reckon they would have looked at a couple of games over the weekend where the third man in was pinged and they didn't want to be pinged. This is good umpiring, though. Have a look at this. Gwilt comes in just to make a ball, rub it in. Good decision, umpire. Let's see more of it. I was encouraged, and I did see more of it.
Is that a rule, Jared, is it?
Third man in, it is now a rule. We've just made that one up.
So we just did it in round 17. We decided to have the third man in rule.
Well, it may well be a rule, and if it is, let's run with it because we saw that no packs whatsoever.
No, but you can't do that. It's like the 4 steps rule.
It's clearly a rule, Mike. I just saw 2 umpires.
We're supposed to know about it.
It's in the rule book.
Is it?
I didn't think you'd ever allow him to hijack your Mad Minute.
Yeah, it's not yours.
I got the DVD out, which you gave me last week, and I checked it out. Third man in gets pinged. One thing that the umpires have got to address, though, is sneaky full forwards. When blokes... that's not you, Jason.
Not you.
What? He's taken over from
It's
me.
this one. Have a look at White here. Now, White gets pushed right out on the right angle.
Yep.
He's been watching DVDs of Jason Dunstall. And look out, back
He should have called play on as soon as he did that.
Immediately. Now he comes back another half step and a half step.
Play on.
He's cribbed 2 metres.
Yep. Smart.
There's a solution to that,
get
boys.
away with it.
There's a solution to that. The umpire stands behind the bloke on the line into the goal. And as soon as he deviates off that line, he calls play on.
There's another solution. Brad Johnson went with it on air last night. He wants the World Cup chalk, the umpires to come out with a marking chalk.
Yeah.
While we finish, Mike, we've got 20-odd seconds. Who's the most famous number 5 at Carlton?
Sid Jackson or Kenny Sheldon of the modern times, or Andrew McKay?
Well, take a look at this specimen and tell us whether he actually would go the list. He's wearing the Carlton jumper. It is Cooperoo, though, old Sticks.
How can you call me podgy? That's me.
Is that you?
Yes.
What happened? How many people did you eat?
Well, that's what I'm saying. You said I came down as a roly-poly. I wasn't roly-poly. I just didn't have endurance.
You look like Bernie Quinlan.
I know. I want to go back to those days.
You were 12 then.
You had a shocking off-season that year. You put on 12 Ks by the time...
I trained hard.
You weren't that fat at all. Thanks for your company.
This is not bounce.
We'll see you next week after round 18, part 1.